Dr. LaPook joins us.
Jon, I'm curious of what reasons officials gave for why it is that they are giving this sort of increased level of concern now.
Well, I think every day that goes by, we learn new things about the Zika virus. Until 2007, only about a couple of dozen of people were reported to be infected. And then it increased to several thousand and tens of thousands in 2013, 2014 in French Polynesia. Then it hit Brazil last May, and now we have more than 1 million people infected, and so now we're getting to have a sense of what happens when a lot of people are infected, and we're seeing not only microcephaly, the small brains that you're seeing in newborns, but also it looks like in experimental models and in reality, the virus goes after neurological tissue. So there was just a troubling report from Brazil that looked at pregnant women who had Zika infection during the pregnancy, and 29% of them had abnormal fetal ultrasounds. Not all of them have given birth yet, but 29% is a high number. And as Tony Fauci, the head of infectious diseases for the NIH, said, that may just be the tip of the iceberg because we're not detecting on the ultrasound abnormalities in the eye. We know it can affect the eye. There's a new neurological symptom that was just reported in adults where it seems to cause inflammation of the brain, kind of a multiple sclerosis-like syndrome, and it can also affect the spinal cord. So every day we're learning new things.
Yeah, I mean, officials have made this a strong call for action over funding. In the past, basically they said what they have available is a quote-unquote stopgap at this point. But where do things stand in that fight?
Well, right now, the White House, and this is at the urging of Tony Fauci and also of Tom Frieden, who's the head of the CDC, the White House has asked for $1.9 billion from Congress. They asked for it back in February, and they still have not given it. And so last week, the White House took the measure of the step of reallocating about almost $600 million, and $510 million of it had been previously allocated for Ebola research, and the other came from some other areas. But that's a stopgap because they're saying, well, we're sort of just diverting those funds. We're going to need the funds to do flu vaccine, malaria, tuberculosis research. But for now, this is so pressing, we're going to take this money.
What's the advice? Because if you're a parent of young children, you wonder about how vulnerable they'll be, especially with the summer months, as you pointed out. I mean, what should people be doing realistically to try to protect themselves and their children?
Well, I think what the CDC is urging is, number one, this primarily affects pregnant women. That's the main risk. We know there are maybe some unusual complications in adults who are not pregnant, but it's pregnant women. So they're saying don't travel to any Zika-affected area. That's number one. Number two, if you have returned from a Zika-affected area, use insect repellent for a couple of weeks. And the reason is that you can have the virus in your bloodstream for a couple of weeks, and then an uninfected mosquito bites you, and that's how it could get into the local mosquito population. You want to keep those mosquitoes away from you while you're returning. Everybody, because 80% of people have no symptoms. So it's not just if you had symptoms down there, it's anybody. And then insect repellent, long sleeves, air conditioning. But ultimately, they're developing a vaccine. They're going to have the phase 1 trial of it in the fall. Tony Fauci tells me, Dr. Fauci, and that's going to be, very important.
All right, Dr. Jon LaPook, important information. Thank you so much.
Lane.